Course 103, Rural Society and Polity in India, Unit 5, Rural Social Transformation in Contemporary Times, Lesson 2, Education and Health. The contribution of the rural economy to India's economic development is something that has been discussed in the earlier lessons of this course. The objective of poverty alleviation and rural development programs, again as was mentioned in the earlier lessons, has been to remove barriers and improve the quality of life of rural citizens. This also comprises bringing an improvement in education, health, nutrition, and providing a safe, healthy and hygienic environment, and also removing gender and other social barriers that inhibit access to facilities and having a better quality of life. In the present lesson 2, we look at the two areas of education and health, try and get an overview of the progress, development or transformation that has happened as far as these two sectors are concerned in rural India. What are the challenges that continue today and even in present times? And we'll also have a look at the government initiatives that have been undertaken. Primarily, the objectives of the lesson are to become aware of transformation in education in rural areas and the current challenges. Likewise, become aware of transformation in health in rural areas and also look at the current challenges. The structure of the lesson is going to be as following. We will have a quick introduction and then move on to look at education. Here we look at the overall progress, what are the key issues. We will also delve on the Right to Education Act and the government initiatives that have been undertaken. Then we will move on to look at some data and statistics, and also lastly wrap up by understanding other challenges that are there. As far as health is concerned, we look at the challenges through a framework of 5 A's. We'll then look at some of the government initiatives, and we'll also touch upon gender and health aspects. As more than half of the population of India lives in villages, 68%, and India will continue to have the largest rural population in the world until 2050. Therefore, having a robust education system in rural areas is very, very important, and it plays a significant role in the growth of the national economy. There are direct and indirect benefits of basic rural education, like increased rate of literacy, like enhanced employment opportunities, poverty reduction, disease control, and so on. The education landscape of rural India has changed over the past several decades. Investment in education facilities has increased, infrastructure for education has been strengthened, and there has also been a change in access to elementary, secondary and even higher education. There are primary schools within walking distance in large parts of the country. The number of schools at the secondary level has increased. Apart from government's efforts, private sector is also making its presence felt in the education field. Even in rural areas, privately run English medium schools are marking their presence. Yet several problems remain. Infrastructure of educational institutions in rural areas is still inadequate. There are still schools that lack drinking water or toilet facility. There's also a problem of dropouts. There's a problem of quality of teaching. In case of secondary and higher education, students are not equipped for gainful employment. The spread of education in rural India might not have made measurable impact on the production process or employment opportunities, but it has resulted in a difference in consumption patterns and lifestyle, especially of the rural youth, who now have a different worldview when compared with the worldview of their parents, and they've come closer to their urban counterparts. There have been several initiatives that have been taken by the Government of India for education in rural India, like the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan that covered the whole of India, including rural areas, like schemes such as the Midday Meal Scheme, and most significantly, the Right to Education Act, which came into force in 2009, and it has really accelerated the spread of education in rural areas. The Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act 2009. This was introduced by the Ministry of Law and Justice to promote the importance of education in India. It is an act to provide free and compulsory education to all children between the ages of 6 to 14 years as a fundamental right. It means that every child has a right to full-time elementary education of a satisfactory and equitable quality in a formal school, and the school satisfies certain essential norms and standards. Now, the words free and compulsory, what do they connote? Free education means that no child, other than a child who has been admitted by his or her parents to a school which is not supported by the government, shall be liable to pay any kind of fee or charge or expenses that will prevent him or her from pursuing and completing elementary education. Compulsory education connotes an obligation on the appropriate government and local authorities to provide and ensure admission, attendance and completion of elementary education by all children in the age group of 6 to 14 years. The central and state governments implement the fundamental child right as enshrined in the Article 21A of the Constitution in accordance with the provisions given in the Right to Education Act. Now, there have been different education programs and projects in rural India for universalizing elementary education and also secondary education. The Lok Jumbish project, which was undertaken in the state of Rajasthan and had a coverage of 75 blocks, and this was an important program from the point of view that several lessons were drawn from this for and became the basis for future education programs in rural India. The idea here was to walk hand in hand with government agencies, teachers, NGOs, elected representatives and people in an interactive effort to promote universalizing of education. And this program had 7 guiding principles. First, importance of a process rather than a product approach. Second, to create partnerships. Third, to have decentralized functioning. Fourth, to promote participatory learning. Fifth, to integrate with the mainstream education system. Sixth, to have flexibility of management, and seventh, to create multiple levels of leadership that was committed to quality. The Shiksha Karmi project implemented 1987 again in the state of Rajasthan, and its aim was universalization and qualitative improvement of primary education in backward remote villages of Rajasthan with a special focus on girls. Village education committees were formed in 2000 villages to promote community involvement in primary education and to also encourage village level planning. There were also non-formal classes known as Praher Pathshalas, which were initiated under this, and also schools of convenient timings for girls education, which were Angan Pathshalas. And the program saw coverage of 1,50,000 students in 1,700 plus schools and 3,000 plus Praher Pathshalas, and it involved 4,000 plus Shiksha Karmis. And the lessons drawn from this program again were combined into future education programs. The midday meal scheme was introduced to provide nutritional support, to increase enrollment, retention and attendance in schools by providing nutritional meal to children, and children attending government schools are given free cooked meals. The Operation Blackboard, which was launched in 1987 to improve school environment for retaining and enhancing learning skills of children, and it brought a remarkable improvement in primary education. The Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, which was launched in 2001, its primary aim was to universalize primary education, covering the whole country with special emphasis on girls' education, education of scheduled caste children, scheduled tribe children, and children with special needs. The centers under this program were mainly in those areas which did not have any school or where schools were very far off. And there were special girl oriented programs like girl education at elementary level. The Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalaya was also introduced. The main features of this program broadly were universal access, universal retention, and universal achievement. So, which means primary education was to be accessible to each and every child of school going age first. Once a child is enrolled in the school, then he or she should be retained there second, and the final step is the achievement of the goal of education. The key components of this program were construction of classrooms, new schools, opening of non-formal schooling centers, setting up early childhood education centers, appointment of teachers, etc. Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, launched in 2009, its aim is to enhance access to secondary education and improve its quality. And it aims essentially to provide universal education for children as regards secondary education, and providing a secondary school within a reasonable distance of any habitation. Its other objectives include improving the quality of education that is imparted at secondary level by making all the schools conform to prescribed norms, to remove gender and socio-economic and disability and other barriers. And it aimed to achieve universal access to secondary education by 2017 and to achieve universal retention by 2020. The Samagra Shiksha program, it's an overarching program for school education in India, extending from preschool to class 12. And this program subsumes the earlier schemes of the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, the Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, and teacher education. Here, the school is seen as a continuum from preschool to primary to upper primary, secondary to senior secondary levels. The program was prepared with the broader goal of improving school effectiveness in terms of equal opportunities and equitable learning outcomes, and to ensure inclusive and equitable quality of education from preschool to senior secondary stage. The main aspects of this scheme are provision of quality education, enhancing learning outcomes of students, to bridge social gender gaps in school education, to ensure inclusion at all levels, to ensure minimum standards in schooling provisions, to promote vocationalization of education, to support the states in the implementation of the Right to Education Act, and to strengthen nodal agencies for teacher training. Let us now look at some data and figures pertaining to rural education, taken primarily from the ASER reports 2019 and 2020. The ASER report refers to, it stands for the Annual State of Education Report. It's an annual survey which provides reliable estimates of children's enrollment and basic learning levels for each district and state in India, and it is facilitated by the NGO Pratham. The enrollment by school type, that is government or private, for the age group of 6 to 14 years. In the figure that we see, this is given for two time periods, 2018, which is marked in the bars with the grey color, and 2020, which is the bars in pink color. So, the first set of bars that we see are for government schools. For 2018, here enrollment in government schools is shown to stand at 64.3%, and in 2020, 65.8%. The second set of bars is for private schools, where in 2018, the enrollment stood at 32.5%, and in 2020 at 28.8%. Clearly, in both the time periods, that is 2018 and 2020, enrollment is more in government schools. Enrollment by school type, that is government or private, and also gender. So, the bars in purple color represent boys and the bars in grey color represent girls, and this is given for 4 to 8 years, further segregated into 2 categories, 4 to 5 years and 6 to 8 years. The reference period is 2019. So, if you look at the graph, we see that in both the age categories 4 to 5 and 6 to 8, that is in the entire age group of 4 to 8 years, more girls are enrolled in government schools. So, in the age group 4 to 5 years, if you see 56.8% girls are enrolled in government schools, whereas those enrolled in private schools stand only at 43.2%. In the age group of 6 to 8 years, again you see that 61.1% girls are enrolled in government schools, whereas only 39% are enrolled in private schools. Now, let us look at the table that is given here. The table actually depicts, out of all the girls in the respective grades that are shown here, standard 1 to 2, standard 3 to 5 and standards 6 to 7. So, of all the girls across these different grades, what is the percentage that is in government schools? So, if we see for both the time periods 2018 and 2020 and across each of the given standards, the percentage of girls in government schools is clearly high. Moving on to percentage of children currently not enrolled in school. The table here shows percent of children not enrolled in school for the time periods 2018 and 20 and across different age groups 6 to 10, 11 to 14, 15 to 16 years, and then also disaggregated by gender. So, for boys as well as girls. So, we clearly see that overall the percentage of girls not enrolled is higher than that of boys. I will pause here and leave you with an activity to do based on the data that we have just seen, where more girls in rural India are enrolled in government schools, and also the percentage of girls not enrolled in schools is higher compared to boys. Think about what this information or data says or indicates about the social fabric in rural India. Write a small note, a one-page note perhaps, on why do you think this happens and what does it say about gender inequality in rural India. Parental education is reflective of a household's social economic status. It is also correlated with enrollment, choice of school for children. Moreover, mother schooling level is highly correlated with where young children are enrolled. The table here shows the distribution of children enrolled by parents' education, and parents' education, that is for both mothers and fathers, is divided into 3 categories, starting from low education where both parents have studied standard 5th or less, and going up to high education where both parents have studied standard 9th or more. The table here shows that children whose parents fall in the category of low education, children of those parents are much more likely to attend government schools. So, if we see the percent of those enrolled in government schools, so for this category of the total percent of children who are enrolled, 84% are in government schools, while parents who fall in the category of high education, they are less likely to send their children to government schools, and the percent here stands at 53%, a little over 53%. Also, studies show that children whose mothers have 8 or less years of schooling are more likely to be enrolled in government schools as compared to children whose mothers have studied further. Children's performance in various learning tasks is also related to their mother's education level. The figure here shows the percent of children who can do early language and numeracy, different tasks, by mother's education level. In the graph, what we see is there are 4 sets of tasks that are given. One is can read at least words, can do oral word addition, and can read at least standard 1 level text and double digit numeric addition. So, these 4 sets are actually divided for standard 1 and standard 3, each having a respective set of 2 tasks. Now, each colored bar represents mother's education, the level of mother's education, starting from no schooling to between standard 1 to standard 5, then standard 6 to standard 8, standard 9 to 10 and standard 11 or more. So, for each task there is a direct correlation that we see. The percent of children performing the task is lower in those with lower mother's education, and it goes higher with the higher the mother's education. Studies also point to the fact that although children are enrolled in school, but they are failing to learn the basics. The table here presents the percent of children in government schools who can at least read a standard 2 level text. So, the data is presented over a few years starting from 2012 up to 2018 and across different standards or grades from standard 2nd up to standard 8th. Again, what we see is that the percentage of those who are able to do the task according to the corresponding class or standard is low, but for the same task the percentage increases as we move to the higher grades. In spite of the different government initiatives and programs that have been undertaken in rural India, there are still a lot of challenges. There is low enrollment, there is inadequate facilities, there is low quality teaching, there is also caste politics, there are also single and 2 teacher schools, there is also a matter of inequity. The single teacher schools are mostly located in remote rural areas, small habitations or hamlets that are occupied by marginalized groups, or invariably they are located in remote, hilly and isolated areas. In such areas, there is also poor connectivity, there is a lack of interaction of the teachers with their peer groups, there is inadequate poor quality facilities in the school. There is also the challenge of multitasking in multi-grade settings, so at the same time handling multi-age children across different grades. The Right to Education Act addresses these issues and indicates the need for establishing schools equipped with a specified level of physical and also human resources. According to the Act, no recognition will be given to a school unless it is adequately equipped. The Right to Education also specifies that teachers should not be left in isolation and provides for teachers to receive support through several means, such as arranging for redressal of their grievances, also relieving teachers from non-educational activities other than the population census or disaster relief duties or duties relating to elections. There is also the issue of caste politics. Inequality and access arise because of the harsh social and economic realities of the contexts of rural schools. Government funds that come to the school are exploited, benefits from the different schemes and programs do not reach the school. For example, children in a school may go without school uniform despite the funds being provided by the government. They may be unaware about the expenditure incurred on the midday meal scheme or scholarships or other incentives that are meant for children and provided by the government to the school. Some key changes are needed. For example, making access meaningful and equitable, creating enabling conditions for motivating teachers and also so that they are accountable, or adopting best teaching learning practices. Health. Equal access to essential and basic health services continue to be a priority for India, and India has already made strides in the eradication of polio and other health indicators such as infant and maternal mortality rates, also reduction in the incidence of HIV, tuberculosis, malaria. Life expectancy at birth has doubled in India since independence. Still, despite the headway that has been made, several challenges remain. Like there are significant inequalities in access to quality and affordable health services. There's low budgetary allocation for health. So while the health status of Indians is still a cause for grave concern, it is more so in the case of rural areas. On all indicators of health, rural areas are below the desirable norms. Let us look at the infant mortality rate, for example, which has been discussed in an earlier lesson as well. Here the figures are given in the table by gender, and the time reference period is 2012. We see that in the case of rural, the infant mortality rate is higher when compared to urban or also India totals, and it is higher in rural female than in rural male. Unsafe, unhygienic birth practices, unclean water, poor nutrition, unsanitary environments are all challenges to the public health system in rural areas. The majority of rural deaths which are preventable are due to infections and also due to communicable, parasitic and respiratory diseases. Infectious diseases dominate the morbidity pattern in rural areas. The healthcare challenges in rural India can be understood by using the 5 A's. What are these 5 A's? First, awareness or the lack of it. Second, access or the lack of it. Third, absence of manpower. Fourth, affordability or the cost of healthcare. Fifth, accountability or the lack of it. Awareness or the lack of it. The basic nature of rural health problems is largely attributed to a lack of health related literature and health consciousness, which leads to poor maternal and child health. When it comes to affordability or the cost of health care, a significant percentage of rural population, which comprises small landholders, artisans, laborers, have limited resources, and what they have is spent on food, clothing, shelter, and they don't have enough to spend on health. Access. Let us understand this better after having a look at some of the healthcare programs. The National Rural Health Mission, launched in 2005 to provide accessible, affordable, quality healthcare to rural population, especially the vulnerable groups. And in 2013, the National Health Mission was launched, and it combined the National Rural Health Mission and the National Urban Health Mission. So the National Rural Health Mission became a submission of the National Health Mission. Here, the healthcare infrastructure in rural areas has been developed as a 3-tier system based on certain population norms. So the 3-tier system is a sub-center, a primary health center and a community health center. A sub-center is for a population of 5,000 if it is a plain area, whereas it is for a population of 3,000 if it is a hilly, tribal or difficult area. A primary health center is for a population of about 30,000, which becomes 20,000 in the case of hilly, tribal or difficult areas. And a community health center is for a population of 1,20,000 or 80,000 for hilly, tribal or difficult areas. The average number of villages which have seen to be covered by a sub-center are 4, by a primary health center about 27, and a community health center about 128. As per data in 2020, there are 1,55,500 plus sub-centers, 24,918 primary health centers and 5,183 community health centers functioning. A sub-center is usually manned with one health worker female and one health worker male, and it is the contact point between a primary health center and the community. A primary health center is usually a referral unit for 6 sub-centers, and it has 4 to 6 beds and is manned with a medical officer in charge and also 14 paramedical staff. A community health center is a referral unit for 4 primary health centers and has a facility of 30 beds and also has specialized services. In order to understand access better, let us have a look at some of these images. First, the average rural population that is covered by a sub-center in India is given by different states. We see that the states where a sub-center covers the maximum population, that is 7,000 and above, are Uttar Pradesh, Bihar and Jharkhand, followed by states like Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, Punjab, Haryana and some of the northeastern states where sub-centers have a coverage of 5,000 to 7,000 population. States like Kerala, Ladakh, Tripura and Sikkim and Mizoram have the least population coverage per sub-center. The average rural population covered by a primary health center. States like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Jharkhand and West Bengal are states where the rural population coverage per primary health center is the highest, 50,000 and above, whereas states like Ladakh, Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland and Mizoram have the least coverage of rural population per primary health center. So, it is less than 10,000 in these states. The average rural population covered by a community health center. Here we see that states where the coverage for a community health center is 50,000 and above are Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, and the lowest population coverage is in states of Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Odisha, Ladakh, Himachal and some of the northeastern states. So, clearly availability and accessibility of healthcare facility has come a long way. Physical reach is one of the basic determinants of access. It's defined as the ability to enter a healthcare facility within 5 kilometers from one's place of residence or work. Now, using this definition, a study in India found that in rural areas in the reference period of 2012, only 37% had access to inpatient facilities within a 5-kilometer distance, and 68% were able to access outpatient facility within 5 kilometers distance. Now, even if a healthcare facility is physically accessible, the question is what is the quality of care that it offers, and is that care continuously available? While the National Rural Health Mission has done much to improve infrastructure in the rural healthcare system, studies also have brought out that there is still a lack of basic infrastructural facilities like beds, like toilets, like drinking water, like clean labor rooms for delivery or even regular electricity. Absence of manpower. Now, the absence of manpower is a challenge that plagues centers at all the three levels, whether it is a sub-center, primary health center or a community health center. Let us look at some data. If you look at the first graph, which shows the shortfall of health manpower at sub-centers and at primary health centers. So, this is given for two time frames, 2019 and 2020. There is a huge shortfall of health workers male, as we can see in both 2019 and 2020, which is more than 60%. In the second graph, we see the vacancy positions in health manpower at sub-centers and also at primary health centers. Here also the time period is 2019 and 2020. Once again, we see that vacancy positions are higher when it comes to health workers males. Moving on to the community health centers, that level, the image here depicts the shortfall of specialists, because community health centers are where specialist services are to be offered. And we see that in both the time frames 2019 and 20, there is a huge shortfall of specialists, whether it is surgeons, whether it is gynecological services or general physicians or pediatricians. And also if you look at the total specialists, then there is a shortfall of more than 80% in 2019 and more than 75% in 2020. The Integrated Child Development Scheme or the ICDS It's a nationwide program launched in 1975 with the objective of providing health, nutrition, education through local centers known as Anganwadi, and the target group is 0 to 6 years. The services that are provided include supplementary nutrition, immunization, health checkups and preschool education. The Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana or PMJAY, which was under the Ayushman Bharat or National Health Protection Mission, and the aim is to provide an annual health insurance cover of 5 lakh rupees to each family. A key aspect of health in rural India is to look at the gender dimensions. The incidence of malnutrition is higher among rural women when compared to their male counterparts or even urban women counterparts in terms of being underweight or anemic. Children of undernourished women naturally will have greater deficiencies. Menstrual hygiene is also a problem in rural areas for women. There are taboos that are associated with it, and in this case the lack of access to toilets and provisions also aggravates the problem for rural women. In fact, school dropout of girls is also linked to lack of toilets or separate toilets. Therefore, when they reach puberty, they tend to drop out. India also accounts for the largest number of maternity deaths. The majority of these are in rural areas where maternal health care is poor. Accountability. A key challenge in the healthcare sector is poor accountability. Community-based accountability is an increasingly used strategy, and it's been a core aspect of the National Rural Health Mission. To conclude, the key challenges in the healthcare sector in rural India are low quality of care, poor accountability, lack of awareness, limited access to facilities. Due to the non-accessibility to public health care and the low quality of healthcare services, a majority of people in India are turning to local private health care. But due to low income, people in rural areas are not being able to afford this either. The kind of improvements that are required for rural health care are, for example, having a family-centered healthcare system, bringing in higher investments in healthcare, building and empowering the primary healthcare teams, and training of rural healthcare professionals. With this, I conclude the lesson. Thank you.